Well, following the Ministry of Foreign Affairs admittance that Nigeria lacks the financial capacity to maintain its foreign missions, resulting in delays in the appointment and deployment of ambassadors and high commissioners, we're now joined by Professor Chris Kwaja. He's a professor of international relations and strategic studies Center for Peace and Security Studies at the Modibo Adama University, Yola. And of course, we have Sambo. He's the director news, politics editor, Arise News. Thank you, both of you gentlemen, for joining us on Newsnight. Let me start with you, Prof. With this development coming from the foreign ministry, where they're saying they are broke. As a matter of fact, Nigerian embassies, we hear, have been hit by unpaid rents, salary arrears, and federal government is blaming it on budgetary shortfalls and forex policy changes. What are your thoughts when you hear that Nigerian foreign ministry does not have money, and that part of the reason why we don't have missions, at least head of missions abroad?
Thank you very much. I think the statement by the Minister of Foreign Affairs drawing attention to the financial challenges it confronts and how that is impacting negatively on our missions abroad contradicts the president's own statement, right, that under his administration, government has been able to mobilize resources and that there are positive signs which represents signposts to growth, which the country should celebrate. I think the statement from the Minister of Foreign Affairs, it's an unfortunate one because we are more than 2 years into the Tinubu administration. Right. When you are confronted with a financial challenge that is hampering the effective and efficient running of foreign missions, what we expect from the Minister of Foreign Affairs is to provide a Marshall Plan to Mr. President, to say, Mr. President, foreign policy must work. Nigeria cannot operate as an island. There are two important pillars to this Marshall Plan. The first is priority. What should be the priority of Nigeria as a major actor in the global scene? Should it be West Africa? Should it be Africa? Should it be the Middle East? And all these pillars, on the basis of these priorities, will also have their own financial costs. Right. Okay. The second is to say, how do we reduce the size of our foreign mission in a way that allows the missions to optimize the resources that they have? And I give you an example. West Africa, for instance, must we have ambassadors across all the 15 countries of West Africa?
That's a very good point you make. But
just one example.
Yes.
You go to Latin America, you go to North America, and all that. That's how countries are responding to challenges that they confront when it comes to running foreign missions. All
right, let me bring in our director of news, Sambo, into this conversation. Somna, I mean, you've covered politics a lot, and you've covered the happenings in this country for a long time, as I continue to say. Are you able to make sense of the paradox at hand? The economy is booming, is stabilizing. We do not care about what Trump is saying because our non-oil revenues are up. Those are the words of President Bola Tinubu. But on the other hand, you hear what the Foreign Affairs Ministry is saying about missions. Make sense of this.
Well, at this one, facts are very stubborn, and you would have seen that in that meeting. Lucky enough, we had the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Yusuf Tuga, right there in that meeting where President Tinubu was speaking with his CPC loyalists, former members of that defunct party. I mean, I wonder what Ambassador Yusuf Tuga would actually have been thinking, because it was his ministry that actually issued the statement, and there he was seated in that hall where President Tinubu was saying all of this. Politically, I mean, it will have just been a very difficult situation for him, and I don't really envy him, because all the diplomats across Nigerian missions worldwide will be looking at him, seated right there, and then, of course, having issued that statement, and his principal, President Bola Tinubu, saying that, and all mixing everything in politics, it will be very difficult for many Nigerian diplomats who are out there unable to pay their bills, the missions are unable to pay their local staff, and you hear how some of these Nigerian diplomats are living abroad. It's a very difficult situation. And for us, who is the largest, black nation on earth, and we have this situation, we don't even have substantive ambassadors, and the ones that we have, the chargé d'affaires and all of that, are facing this financial crisis. Well, it's a huge challenge, and like I said, facts don't lie. And the current facts that we have right now is that we currently run a tripartite budget system where, for example, as we speak right now, the capital component of the 2024 budget has been pushed by Parliament, that's the National Assembly, even to December 31. That's to say that we are still running the capital component of 2024 budget. Then the question to ask is, what of the 2025 budget? Capital component of the budget. Contractors are crying that federal government is not paying. Now, here we have the president saying that our non-oil revenues have increased. And yes, indeed, on paper, it has increased to about 13.07 trillion naira as at August. But then the big question, the big elephant in the house is, where is the money? And I've spoken with some people within the government and out of government, and they said that the federal government seems to be mopping up these monies by the Minister of Finance and using it to actually pay up debts that we owe, servicing foreign debts and all of that. These are some of the obligations that President Tinubu thinks that we should focus attention on. But then what of local contractors who have gone ahead to borrow monies to execute projects and all of that? And I don't know why opposition politicians in the federal parliament, lawmakers of the opposition party, are not speaking so much. If those in the governing APC cannot speak out, what of those who are in the opposition in Parliament, the National Assembly? People are complaining that they go to the banks to borrow money to execute federal government projects, and they are not getting monies, and they will have to reshuffle their loans, with the banks, and the banks are coming out hard and saying that even the projects that have not been completed, they won't give more funds to the contractors to continue because the contractors don't know when they will be paid. So the realities will be facing us right before us. But indeed, the federal government has actually done very well by ensuring that our non-oil revenues continue to rise due to taxes, due to some of the, gymnastics that they are doing to actually ensure that our revenues show up. But in reality, the only way this can be felt is when indeed the capital component of the budget works for the people. Because the recurrent component has been paid. People have been paid salaries and all of that. But how many federal workers do we have? Because it's only the capital projects that actually go to the millions of Nigerians who are not in government, who are not civil servants, who are not political employees, or who are political office holders, and all of that. But how come this capital component is not working well? And even ministers within the government are complaining bitterly.
Yeah, yes, indeed. So many points raised by Sambo there, Prof. You did mention earlier that it might just be a reflection of Nigeria's priority. If Nigeria, a country that wants foreign direct investment, that wants to sell her as a great nation to, visit and do business with, and you don't have ambassadors out there. First off, what are the implications for Nigeria's international standing? What does this really mean, especially, for soft power and all of that?
It has huge implications for a country like Nigeria. Diplomatically, for you to be an important actor in the international system, you must have functional missions. You must have ambassadors that are representatives of the president of this country. Right now, we don't have. At the level of the UN, we don't have a permanent representative. At the level of the UN, we don't have ambassadors in what they call grade A countries, Russia, the United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, and all that. You don't have that. It means you are totally shut out of the conversation when it comes to discourses around trade, security or military, and other issues that should border on Nigeria when it comes to how, as a country, Nigeria is able to project its own national power globally. And that is why Nigeria is not saying anything when it comes to the whole issues we see around Russia in West Africa, the US and other countries or actors in West Africa as it relates to the security and the future of the Sahel, beyond what we see happening at the level of ECOWAS. But again, ECOWAS is limited when it comes to what it can do, as seen with the 3 countries that broke out of ECOWAS to form the Alliance of Sahelian States. That's one example of what we see. The Minister of Foreign Affairs is limited in terms of how he is able to mobilize the ministry to engage all these countries. We need ambassadors. They are not there. That becomes a huge foreign policy deficit for Nigeria. And I think this is a priority that the Tinubu administration must look at with a view to addressing, because as it stands, it's a major minus for this administration, because we've never had this kind of situation in the history of this country.
Well said. You know, the president did mention today that he apologized, started that meeting today by apologizing to his guests, that he came late, unlike late President Muhammadu Buhari, because he was reviewing the budget of Minister Tuga. So perhaps we'll get more from that. But it was a veiled reference. Talking about ambassadors, he did also say that he couldn't appoint everybody at once. He thanked the Buhari organization for their patience and said he had some slots for ambassadorial positions and that so many people are craving for it, but that it is not easy to stitch those names together. These are the words of the President Sumner. What do you make of that? But I also want us to touch, to remain on this funding issue, because we're also seeing something developing in this House of Representatives. Although they say they are united, but there were cracks over the weekend, talks about, you know, even removing the speaker over funding for projects. So if you're making so much money like you've raised, where is the money? Where can we begin to look for this money? How do we track these monies that President Bola Tinubu is talking about?
Good question. And that is where, you know, President Bola Tinubu's statement actually will be questioned by a whole lot of financial experts, because he said we are not borrowing and that we have enough money now. I mean, he was speaking from the perspective of non-oil revenues. Yes, I said the government is actually doing very well, having raised enough taxes. In fact, from even January next year, when the new Nigeria Revenue Service Bill that has now become an act will be come into effect, will be any more monies domestically, because, I mean, there will be a rise in taxation and all of that. It's very, very good, very, very good. But then, of course, these issues continue. You have a classical example here, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs saying that, look, we do not have monies at the moment. Our embassies, our high commissions, and other places are actually, you know, being challenged with funding issues. What I know is that currently there are special intervention mechanisms being put in place to have an abridged version of funding that could help sustain these budgetary shortfalls by the diplomatic missions. But for how long can we continue? Because if you look at it, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs statement was very clear. It's a budgetary constraint, and it's coming from the National Assembly. Now, the basic funding of high commissions are not even being taken care of. Talk more of contracts and all of that. And then, of course, that's a more reason why you've seen that President Bola Tinubu has delayed the appointment of ambassadors for 2 years plus now, because he's feeling that the wage bill is high. Because it's not just about the embassy staff and all of that. When you are to appoint an ambassador, you're going to appoint someone who will come in with his family and other, you know, appointees and all of that. And then, of course, the issues of vehicle, the issues of fueling and all that things will come into place. And that's why even former President Buhari had been running away from this because he was trying to save Nigeria some funds. But these are things that you must do. If you don't do it, you put the embassy staff in a situation whereby they may become beggars. Some of them will go into doing businesses that don't align with the original intention of why they are there. And some of them even will engage in espionage activities against their own home country, selling Nigeria's secret for pittance because they need to survive in foreign land and all of that. So I'm very sure that's why President Tinubu would have told his guests that he's trying to take a look at that, looking at the budget presented to him by Ambassador Tuga, and then, of course, to cut across the situation as to whether the political appointees that will be brought in as the non-career ambassadors can fit in. Of course, he can't give ambassadorial appointment to everybody. So he has to cut his wage. Then coming to the issues that you raised about, the House of Representatives and other members of the parliament like the Senate are complaining that the constituency projects are not being funded. Because of what? Because of budgetary shortfalls by the federal government. And so where are the monies that we have said that we are generating? Because ministers in the same cabinet, the Federal Executive Council, are complaining that the capital component of their budget are not being attended to. If we're in 2025 going towards by now, the budget for 2026 is supposed to have been discussed, but it's not even been discussed by the executive. Now we have a tripartite budget where the 2024 budget, the supplementary budget, and the 2025 budget are running concurrently, and then there's funding shortfall. So people are asking, where is President Bola Tinubu's expertise when it comes to financial engineering of the country? So we need to see all of this being put to the street and then let it make sense in the pockets of Nigerians, not just saying it on TV or before politicians.
Just on paper, Prof, you have the last word very quickly. I mean, we're hearing from the federal government that it's taking decisive steps to ensure that, special intervention funds are released. In fact, it says about 80% has already been released. But hasn't the damage been done? How can you fix this very quickly, this situation with Nigeria's inability to, fund both foreign missions and MDAs in Nigeria? Very quickly.
I think the point is about prioritizing.
Right.
Right now, the Tinubu administration needs to prioritize, and that is where the Minister of Foreign Affairs comes in. He needs to sit down and look at what are the urgent issues that need to be prioritized, both from the perspective of appointing ambassadors, providing the financial enablement for the missions to be active. I think for me, that should be the starting point. You might not go all the way dealing with 190 countries at the same time,
right,
but the first 20, what are the priorities? The first 20 countries, get that done, and we move. It's as good as that.
Right. Okay, I guess it's a good place to leave it. Tonight on News Night, Sambo, thank you very much. Director News, Arise News, thank you. And of course, Professor Chris Kwaja is International Affairs Analyst, Country Director, Former. Thank you very much. He's Professor of International Relations and Strategic Studies, Center for Peace and Security Studies at the Modibo Adama University in Yola. Thank you very much for joining us.